Sanjeev, thanks so much for joining us today on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast. Really excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Gary. It's amazing to be here.
I wanted to get you on for a while. Obviously, people on social media are well aware of your work, and just I think for myself personally, Twitter used to be an unbelievable place to get new ideas and a bit of innovation and creativity, and it's probably moved away from that. But you're someone who has always, in a really positive way, put out stuff that's different and creative, and I just think there's so much room for that in the game at the minute. So I really appreciate what you do and excited to chat about it.
Yeah, I really appreciate those comments.
What I want to start the conversation is basically an overview of the game. I mean, talking about Twitter and social media, it's a place that a lot of people voice their frustrations about the game in North America. We're not technically this, we're not technically that, and Canada, US seems to be pretty similar in what a lot of people say. Where do you think that we are in the last couple of years? Where are we making progress on the technical side of the game, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you actually look at the game over the last number of years in North America, it's improved a lot. It's definitely if you look back to the year 2000, over the last 20 years, huge improvements. Just from a technical perspective, I think maybe social media helps a bit. Kids can watch lots of games anytime. So I think that's helped a lot. I think Barcelona has really changed the way people view the game over the last 15 years. And probably across the continent, you start to see more people passing the ball, more coaches encouraging their kids to pass the ball almost to a fault. So I think passing has become better, but passing is what is passing? Is it short passing? What kind of distribution are we talking about here? So when I'm talking about passing, I'm thinking maybe the 5 to 15 yard pass has gotten better. Maybe we can keep the ball a little bit longer without real purpose. But I don't know if the game has improved so much that we can actually compete with the best teams in the world. Our best players can, yes, on the national teams maybe, but in general, it's improved in passing, but passing also involves a lot of other things beforehand, which I don't think have improved. I think unopposed technical work, yes, has improved. Because of social media, kids can go onto Instagram, they can see a really cool video, and they can go and do that trick, which makes them feel like they're getting better. So they go do more. They go do more unopposed work. So they're getting a little bit more comfortable on the ball than the kids were 20 years ago. They're a lot more creative on the ball in unopposed situations. That doesn't mean that the game has improved. The things that haven't improved too much, I don't think. I think something that's really important that doesn't get worked on is movement off the ball. Movement in terms of, do I show for the ball? Do I pull away? Do I get in behind? And how do I do that? How do I do double movements, triple movements? How do I combine a certain movement to create space for another player? These are very important parts of the game that at the highest level, yeah, they're happening. But I think at the lower levels here, maybe we don't recognize that, and you don't actually have to do it. That's the other crazy part, is you can coach proper things in your training session, but they don't necessarily happen in the game because the opposition is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. From a receiving perspective, I think there needs to be tons of variety in receiving. As you know, 75% of situations is receiving back to goal. So are we actually teaching kids on how to receive if you have a man on your left side versus if he's directly behind you, if there's 2 yards of space, if they're tight to you, what kind of turn is it? Right? So there's so many different types of turns you can do on the first touch or on your second touch, or do you deceive the player by stepping in and then letting the ball go by you? There's so many ways of receiving, but are those being worked on? I don't know if they are. I would say probably not, based on what I see on the field usually with kids. And when you see someone that's got that little flair on their first touch, you're like, wow, that kid's amazing. And really, it shouldn't be like that, because if you go to Europe, every kid has that ability to go around the corner, step to the ball, let it go past them, no touch turns, various ways of turning. So that, I think, needs to be worked on. So, movement off the ball, which allows for you to then receive the ball. Then when you're on the ball, how do you outplay? Are you comfortable enough to actually use not only the defender in front of you, but the space and your teammates? Because a lot of kids think that outplaying is me against you. That's the most simple form of the game, obviously, right? You take the 11v11, it's a 1v1. But in my opinion, the game should be created into a 2v1. So how do you utilize space and the player beside you to beat this man? So if I look over to the right, obviously you as a defender think I might go to my right. If I open my hips to my right, if I open my shoulders to the right, all of a sudden I've just created space for myself to go to the left. But if you actually watch kids when they play one-on-one, what do? They put their head down first. So if my head's down for the defender, they know now it's one-on-one time. But if my head is up, now they're thinking, is he going to pass the ball or is he going to take me on, right? And most likely they're thinking, oh, he's looking up. He's going to look to go somewhere else. But now it allows me to fake to pass to go on the dribble or fake the dribble to pass, right? So I think the deception is a huge part of it. For me, for my core skills model, the ultimate part of the model is deception in every single thing you do. So whether you have the ball at your feet or whether you move before the ball or whether you receive on your first touch or whether you're looking to finish, how do you open your hips up to make it look like you're going to go far post and they cut it back at the last moment? How do you close your hips to look like you're going to drive that ball with your laces and then open up at the last moment? And for me, that's the excitement of the game. That's what I really enjoy watching kids do. And so I think when kids turn 10 to 11 years of age, those kinds of skills are starting to come out if you start to develop the foundation. And then I think now at this present moment, the world is starting to speak a little bit more about scanning. And I think, if you think about the last 3-4 years, scanning has become a something that, high level coaches start to talk about. And I think if you're really starting to talk about the future of the game, scanning is extremely important. And I know, like, I've always coached scanning, but I've learned quite a bit about scanning now, especially about scan timing. Where do you scan? What do you scan for? Right. These are things that probably were never discussed. It was just, hey, have a look over your shoulder, and when you look over your shoulder, what do you actually see? Right. And then I think the last part of the game, I think we're probably not there yet at the highest levels in Europe. It's there. It's the cognitive development of the game. And I think that'll probably take a few years. But if people could get into that part of the game now, they're ahead of the game. So if they could start working on brain training, and brain training starts at the youngest age. It's not when the kid becomes pro, we start developing their cognitive. It's when the kid is 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age. And it doesn't have to be sports specific, but simple focus activities, simple activities where they can actually start to do 2 things at the same time. Right. And so I think that's where the game is going. And for me, I don't have that much knowledge on it, but I do try to incorporate whatever I think is cognitive and whatever I think scanning could be to take part in my receiving and outplaying and finishing skills.
Yeah, it's really interesting that, like, what you're saying there is, in some areas we're getting better, but then as you go deeper in the detail and mind for that there, then all of a sudden we open ourselves up to areas that we need to start meshing with the basics. So with that in mind, then it brings us along nicely to then, the training techniques, and something that always stands out. Like I said, something that your work makes me think, and sometimes goes against traditional methods and traditional thinking and traditional messaging, which I like, because I think we need a bit more of that there. The first item or the topic would be, you talk about gamification. I'm going to show a quick video, which was one of your posts here. So if someone's listening to this in the podcast, I'll put this up on YouTube as well if you want to see it in the clips. Also, obviously, it's on your Twitter as well. But this gamification, this was a recent one that you posted. And I thought this was really interesting, with a player. Someone's throwing cones. I think someone throws a shoe in here in a second.
I know, it's amazing. It's either her brother or her father.
There's the shoe.
That's the best part right there.
So talk to me about, your design around gamification. What are you trying to achieve here? And what's talk me through the steps of how you put that together.
Well, I mean, if you gamification is a word that's come about in the last couple of years, obviously, but gamification is everything that children do in today's society. So if you start from kindergarten with little kids, every little game that they play online is gamification. There's always levels. So whether it's Raz Kids reading program, as soon as you read a book, you get 10 points. Soon as you answer questions, you get 50 points. And so there's always some sort of award system that's in play. So it's part of their life, whether they're learning languages with Duolingo, whether it's Zorbit's math for kindergarten kids. Like you start from the first day when the kid gets on their iPhone, there's gamification. So from a coaching perspective, if we do not gamify our sport, then it's completely different from the world that they actually live in. And so we need to actually be in that world. So that world maybe didn't exist 10 years ago and before, for sure not. But now we need to figure out how can we get to the kids level. So for example, you probably remember as a kid growing up, the best game that you would probably ever play is you 5 or 6 of you guys after training or before training, you play World Cup. One guy goes in goal. Okay, if you shoot, you score. Argentina. Yeah, that's my goal. I'm out, right? So if you actually think about that, that's the simplest form of gamification because there's actually layers of levels that they're going through, right? So they go from round 1 to round 2 to semifinals to the final, right? And so they're actually doing that. We've actually been doing that forever and ever. But those kind of games, which actually kids love, we take away from them and then we give them a drill. That's just meaningless, right? If you brought a dice to a game to a training session, and you came up with a small-sided game, and you said, okay, if you roll the die and you get 1, it means this. If you roll 2, that means you can only use your left foot. If you roll 3, you're only allowed to you can play with 1 extra man, right? Like you just come up with different levels, and all of a sudden it's gamified, and the kids are excited. You start adding in timeouts. Right. So you say, okay, the game we're going to play is 4 minutes long. At any point in that game, you can have a timeout. You call the timeout. Everyone gets together. You've got 20 seconds to come up with your own plan. So all of a sudden, kids are now empowered to not only control the game, to call the timeout, but to also control the game by coaching each other and say, hey, we got to figure this out. We're losing here. How can we figure this out? Right. So I think it's the most important part of coaching at this present moment that we need to be aware of, because if we're not, you're just going to lose kids. Recent studies have actually shown that in the next generation, so our kids, their kids will probably not play sports anymore. They'll probably put them into EA Sports types games. So instead of, your parents we put our kids into sports, we take them to soccer, we take them to whatever, hockey, whatever it is. They will be actually putting them into video games because that's what they did. This generation plays video games. So why would they go to the field when they never played as kids? Right. So we have to gamify. It's an emergency state, I feel like, for us as coaches to figure that out and to provide that excitement of where you have multiple lives. And if you fail, that's okay. Let's do it again. But the key is not let them fail and just regard it as, oh, yeah, you're the greatest in the world, because then you're not producing any players anyways. Right. You're not helping them get any better. But every time they're failing, it's okay. Let's try it again. Hey, what do you think you could have done better here? Let's try it that way, right? And so you're giving them some suggestions. Maybe they're giving you suggestions because that's the generation we live in. They want to tell you, right? They want to tell you what they feel. So let them tell you, and then, okay, you try it the way you're telling me.
Let's talk about decision making, because and I don't want to go down the road of opposed, unopposed, and isolate, because I think it's all got value at certain amounts. It's just when and where and what stages. So decision making is something that we talk a lot about as coaches. And you've got a couple of points there about awareness and scanning, and how do we drop that in and still control? How do we balance that as coaches to design the session and still get what we need out of it, but still facilitate that decision making component?
There's huge arguments over decision making, right? You can go both ways, unopposed versus opposed, like you said. Decision making is obviously the game, right? So if we as coaches start designing things, like I look at the 4 R's. So for me, 4 R's are important: receiving the ball, receiving the ball, running with the ball, retaining the ball, and releasing the ball, right? So if I'm giving a kid something to do at home, I think that you could still design decision-making stuff for them to do by, even if their parents, let's say they put up two t-shirts, red and yellow, right? And then you throw down two t-shirts on the ground that are red to the left and right, and then two on the ground that are yellow, maybe in the front and in the back. It could be a shoe because you don't have two t-shirts that are yellow. So now the kid might play it against the wall, the house, like I used to do. I kick the ball against the home. And then as they're receiving the ball, the parent is putting it up, but the parent is behind them. So all of a sudden the kid's scanning, right? So in order to scan, they have to look, which is particular to the game. So once they've looked, now they have to make a decision which cone went up or which color went up. Was it red or yellow? Red means I can go this way or I can go that way, left or right. Now, which way am I going to go? Is this one closer or that one closer? So they actually have to make a decision, right? So they gather the information, they make a decision, and then they have to execute it by doing a certain type of move, right? Is it take it with my outside foot? Do I take it with my inside foot? Do I control my sole because I looked over my shoulder and I didn't have enough time? So all of a sudden, the decisions are all coming into play, but it's a matter of how you design that. And so, I mean, I'm lucky. We use blaze pods or we'll use cones. I just come up with different things. So, recently we bought blaze pods last year. And so colors start flashing, right? And then you can start putting cones out or gates. And so, I'll play a little 1v1 game, for example. Kids are playing 1v1, but I'll set the blaze pods where the colors change between, let's say, 3 to 8 seconds. You can do whatever you want. So when they're playing one-on-one, ball rolls out, they see the color go off. Red means, okay, there's four corner flags for the field. So there's a red cone, there's a blue cone, yellow cone, and a green cone. If the red goes off, you score on the goal that's close to the red. But as they're dribbling, it might go off at any moment. It could be between 3 to 8 seconds. They don't know that. So as they're dribbling, the color goes off. They can't score there anymore. They have to now look for the next color. So they're constantly looking up and deciding based on what happens, right? So some people will say that's not appropriate. It's not proper decision making, but the reality is that we don't always have a 3v3 game or a 4v4 game that we can apply because kids are going to go train on their own. For example, this last 2 months, we've been at home doing COVID training, online training. So how do I incorporate decision making into that, right? So I get the parents to come out and I tell them to put up cones, and that's how we do it. So, I mean, different situations in training, it's easy, right? Decision making, you can do it easily. But when you're at home, a little bit different, obviously, but you just got to get really creative with it.
Yeah, that's your Jogo bonito Outplay program. So that was designed around COVID? Was that incorporating certain skills? I mean, how did you structure that? How did you design it?
Yeah, it's the whole purpose of the Jogo. We created this tournament, Jogo bonito Outplay Futuro, and so basically it ran from May 1st, and it's actually coming to an end today, May 31st. And the way I designed it was knowing that the kids are going to be home for this month. They're not allowed to train. They're not allowed to go play with their friends. They're probably not going to go outside and do footwork with a ball, right? When I tell them to do it, they're not going to go do it because it's not fun, right? Like, who really wants to go out there and do 100 Vs and 10 step overs, this and that? Like, it's boring. So what I did is I met with them all. I designed the tournament based on last year because we did it last year. So we did a Zoom meeting, and I said to them, we're going to have this tournament, and there was rules put in place. You have to submit your video by 12 o'clock on a certain day. They were provided their schedule in late April. So they had a 30-day schedule of 12 to 15 matches. So every other day they're basically playing, and they were going to play amongst their own age group, so against their own teammates. So there were certain criteria put in place. So you have to have variety of skills. You have to have coordination of both feet. Are you deceptive within your move? Are you doing it with speed? Is there flow from one to the next? And is there complexity of the movement? Right. So those were the things that we looked at. So last year, the way we did it was we would put it on Instagram, and then it was a vote. So then you'd go get hundreds of your friends and your family to vote. And so it wasn't really the best one that won. It was the most favorite. It was that was cool, I thought. But then I was like, well, the best players sometimes don't win. So this year, what I did is I wanted to do it. So I got engaged the whole academy. So from 2008 and younger, the kids participated. So that was under 13 and younger. Under 14 and older, they were our judges. So I created a huge spreadsheet. So all those kids, then I got on a WhatsApp group, and I would send them, the games are done for the day, guys, go on and vote. And then they would speak back and forth. They'd WhatsApp each other and say, oh, I like that guy. He's really doing well. I think that one's going to be doing well. And so they'd go back and forth. So all of a sudden, it's a big community now involved. So all the kids know that the older kids are actually voting for them. All the older kids in the academy actually know all the younger kids in the academy now because they watch the video, they go through it, they judge, and then they give a little point. End of the day, I actually, in the morning, I wake up, I accumulate all the score. It's already accumulated, and then I just put it down. I send it on Instagram. Here's the winners for the day, and the kids love it. And so when I get online with them, every couple of days I go through the results. Hey, so and so is on top of the standings. They got this many points, and and the last couple of days have been real hype because I've been putting little videos together where it's in our 2008, for example, we got two girls that are in the final playing against each other, and the final match is today. So they're submitting their videos to me today. It'll go up tonight. And I put like a little trophy there. It was, I think it was the European Champions League Women's Trophy. And then I just put Jogo bonito on there. And so it's just total hype. It's been great. And what we're going to actually do now is I've actually got a couple of other clubs that are involved from other parts of Canada. I've got a couple of clubs in America that are interested, and we're going to do a little Champions League series. So they're doing their little tournament, and then we're going to do a little Outplaying tournament online. So we haven't figured out how we're going to do that, but it's coming now.
Staying on the training methods and exercises and design, another one I'm going to pull a video up here is this was more of a group training, which is the scoop and twist one that jumped out at me. And again, I'll just play it here. We can chat on it.
It's a great strike.
The tires, Sanjeev, putting them in different places.
Make sure you switch your goalies.
Little chip over. Great technique.
Well done. Hit that left foot.
They seem to be enjoying that there.
Switch your goalies.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is hilarious. I contacted my buddy. He's a mechanic, and I said, "Hey, do you have some tires?" He goes, "Yeah, how many you need?" I said, "I need different sizes. I need big ones. I need small ones. Just bring them." And he brought me 8 tires to the training session. He threw them in. He had to rent someone's van, and then after his work, he brought it over to the training center. I said, "Just make sure you get them there." And so I designed some ideas. I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do some finishing. I'll do some dribbling. I'll do some passing." And so we came up with all these ideas. And scooping for me, that's an important part of the game that probably not many people work on. But if you watch the top players, they can figure out situations at the last moment. And scoop is something that happens all the time. So, I had a little scoop in there. You had to play it through the tire, so a little bit of accuracy there. Basically, they were kind of like mannequins, right? Or they were like a cone or a pull, but they were a little bit bigger. We even did something in that session where the kid would roll the tire at you, and you'd have to dribble at it. So while you're dribbling, they'd roll it, and then you'd have to avoid it and then shoot. So you might be off balance. You just don't know where that ball's going to go. Or they might roll it, or it might roll this, twist it so that it kind of like, it's not rolling, but it's turning and twisting. So now you really got to avoid it. You might scoop it over, jump around it. It was wild. The kids loved it. And it just brings some sort of excitement to training. So it's exactly the same thing I'm always doing. It's still the same finishing, same concepts. We're working on finishing, closing your hips, opening your hips, looking up, scanning, timing now of going at a player, but now it's a tire instead, and I made it into little competitions. There's 2 teams going simultaneously. It was just a lot of fun, and the environment was great that day.
Hi, coaches. Appreciate you watching the webinar podcast interview with Sanjeev. Just want to take a quick break and say a huge thank you to our sponsors who make the podcast happen. Wildcard, really, really excited to team up with them. A lot of apps in youth sports are pretty clunky and they focus only on operations. Wildcard are not. Their all-in-one app empowers you to manage your team or club and create social engagement directly with your players. You can stay connected beyond game time with blazingly fast features like chat, virtual challenges, and game recaps. They've recently launched club management, so you can manage hundreds of teams, delegate responsibility, and communicate with everyone in your club simply. A desktop version of the club management comes out in mid-June, and you can import thousands of teams, events, and rosters in one click and manage your entire club comfortably on your computer. please go ahead, sign up for the summer and fall season with Wildcard. If you get on board now in June, you will get Wildcard for free. Plus, you'll get grandfathered in. The link is below. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link is just below. And if you're watching it on the website, modernsoccercoach.com, we've got the link below as well. So please, we can't make the podcast work without sponsors. So massive thanks to Wildcard. And also, if you want to help out and if you want to get behind the podcast and help us out, please go ahead, check out Wildcard, support the sponsors. Top class product. Thank you so much. Back to Sanjeev. We go, I find this fascinating because, again, going back to social media and going back to people that are sharing desire, I always think people do the layup these days. I want to share, it's a 4v2 rondo, and then progresses into an 8v4, and then all of a sudden we'll play it. And like if you're a player, that you can get tactical points across and different concepts across and principles. But if you're a player at 7, 8 years of age and you're being exposed to that session design, surely you're going to be disengaged with training by the time you're 12. And I look at your stuff and like, all right, Quick Goal aren't selling tires. Thankfully, they'd be a fortune. But if I'm a player or I'm a parent and I'm dropping my son off or my daughter off there and thinking, gets you engaged a little bit more, doesn't it?
Absolutely. For me, coaching changed quite a bit when I had little kids, because when you have kids, that's when you start to realize they are not. So I would look at coaching as, okay, I'm going to produce players, right? Mm-hmm. And so you were producing players, you're making them more skillful. And then when you have kids, then you start to realize that they want to do certain things that relate to play. Right. And play is the main word. They just want to play. So if I can make everything playful, whether it's a warm-up game, it's a tag game, it's play. Right. Whether it's strength exercises, it's play. Right. Everything is play. And it's just excitement. All of a sudden you're developing the passion for the kids. So for me, that was something I learned. As my little kids started to grow up, they just want to play. So I'd go in the basement, I'd play one-on-one with them. I was never going to go in the basement and show them scissors. But you know what I did? I started to realize very quickly that role modeling was a huge thing in my children's lives. So what I would do is when I play one-on-one, I would beat them all the time. I still want to try to beat them, but I struggle to beat them now. But what happened is I would beat them as a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old. I let them win a little bit, but I beat them all the time so that they understand that winning and losing is important and that you have to earn the win and not just, oh, I'm a winner, I get a trophy, because I competed. So what I would do is I would role model skills. And what I would do is I would do a scissors. I'm like, oh, did you see that scissors? And I go crazy, right? Like I would do a Maradona. Oh, Diego Maradona with that move. You're just getting all excited. And so the kid's like, oh, that must be something important because there's excitement in that move. And then I'd score. I'd do the crazy celebrations, somersaults, cartwheels, whatever celebrations you can imagine. So all of a sudden now for the child growing up, they're like, okay, this is the move that my dad used to beat me with. This is the move. I'm going to do it to them now. And so what I would do is I would ask him, where did you learn that move? And he'd be like, in my mind. But I know that my kid loved to role model. He was role modeling all the time, right? So he would always come back to me, in my mind. That was like the classic saying. So then I start to realize like, okay, me as a role model, I can show everything. And if I'm playing with these kids, I'm doing things. I don't need to do scissors with them unopposed. I could do them in games and they're like, oh my God, did you see that move? And then automatically they go and practice it on their own, when they're playing. And then when they do it, I'm always encouraging them. Hey, that was great. Great try. And so when they hear the coach say, great try, then all of a sudden that's what's expected. I can go into games where we'll play a game at U9 and we get blown out. People like, what a joke team. But my kids would be like, oh, I got my 3 Maradonas today and I did my 2 scissors and I made that one bending, whatever it was, right? Like, so all of a sudden we're like, we got victories today on whatever we were trying to accomplish because it's all about the individual and not about the team. Because at the end of the day, when my kid gets to 18 years of age, did I help them go on to play at university, professional or international? That's my only ambition, right? And did I keep them in the game forever and ever and ever? And if I can develop passion at the beginning, then that passion will remain, because then I'm teaching them to be persistent, right? Like they're trying things and they start to realize that it's okay to fail. Trial and error is coming along, right? And so just the basic ideas of education, where you allow kids to try, allow them to fail, observe it, correct it, and give them more rehearsal. And that's the way it's got to be. But I think a lot of people study that, but when it comes down to the game, it's really important to win that game, and then everything's out the window. Right. And for me, the game doesn't mean anything. I tell parents when they come to us, I said, if you're here to win, you're in the wrong place. You need to go to the other clubs, because we're not here to win. We're here to produce players. If your child is here to become a better human being, we talk about our 7 pillars. So if you're here for these reasons, great. If you're not, then, you can go somewhere else where you can go win a game, and it might mean something for you now, but 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, you're not playing soccer.
Yeah, I obviously I had to work at the young ages. But I'm fascinated because I look at it from when you reverse engineer it and go down. Passion, for me, passion is the driver. And I watched that Alex Ferguson documentary last night, and the 2 of my biggest takeaways were the Cantona joined him because he was lost in football. He had lost the passion. But then Ferguson always talks about this feeling, this in his drive and everything. And I almost again think that what would I want from my kids are probably about 1 year away from going into environments, and I'm not thrilled about sending them into. I don't care about a tactical structure, but I do care that they care enough about, like, it would thrill me to bits to see my little kid out practicing. So it would thrill me to bits to watch a game with my son, 10, 15 years of age, and him to be enthusiastic about the game. Because the more I see at older age groups, that sometimes it's not that the fire burns out, it's that the fire was never really lit to begin with. They're playing
100%.
for reasons. Yeah.
100%. If you think about, like, I guess you got little kids, right? So they're going into the stage of starting to play the game, right? I think you're saying. So
Yeah.
If you look at these little kids, I tell parents all the time in our meetings, I said, do you understand the idea of parallel play? They look at me like, what is parallel play? Never heard that word before. And so in our country and your country, same thing. When a kid turns 1 year old or 2 year old, they're told sharing is caring, right? But what parents don't realize is sharing is not caring at all for little kids, because they don't understand the concept of sharing. Because I'm playing with you, we're playing together, but I'm playing with my toy, you play with your toy, but we're playing together. They don't share. Right. But the idea of sharing is caring becomes like this huge thing that parents force upon children. And so that happens on the soccer field. We go into under 8s, under 7, under 9s, and all of a sudden you got to pass the ball. And you hear parents either say, pass the ball or kick the ball, or he's such a hog. Mm-hmm. And that word, he's such a hog, means that parent is completely uneducated about how a child is supposed to develop, which is normal. But if you have a child, then you should understand children a little bit, at what stages they're at. And so the children that are at 7, 8, 9, 10, they're going through parallel play, which is me and the ball. So if that is true, then why aren't we giving kids the ball? And why are we playing 7v7? And why are we playing 9v9? Right. So if a child wants the ball, then allow them to play 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, smaller games, right? Like in Belgium, they have a program in place where it's 2v2, right? From 5 and 6 years of age. Why do they do that? Because kids want the ball and they get the ball, right? And so I don't tell kids to pass the ball. When you come to me, they dribble. They get the ball and they dribble. And one thing that I read a number of years ago, which stuck with me, was it was a biography on Lionel Messi. He talked about in Argentina, when you play street soccer, when someone gets the ball, you allow them to do their thing, because they're going to get it and they're going to have excitement with the ball. And then when you get the ball, it's your turn to have excitement with the ball. And that is the game for them. So if you look at the Argentinians or Brazilians, that's the way they play. They're creative on the ball because they were allowed to do that when they were young. If you look at North America, we're a conservative culture. We share, we pass the ball, we give it to you. We don't want to take too much credit. Where in North America, it's completely different than South America, right? So the creative flair comes out in those South Americans, where here there is none, because we take it away from our kids, right? The genius that our 5-year-olds are, we take it away. By the time they're 9, they've lost all that genius, right? If you actually want to do a simple study, take your little 5, 6-year-old kids, give them a ball and tell them your objective is, there's the goal, to score the goal. You pass them the ball, they will always try to get the ball to that goal first. They will miss the ball almost all the time. But when you pass it to them, they will naturally try to get the ball and go to goal. If you actually think of that concept, that is like the most important concept in soccer. Get your body turned forward, break lines. This is all the stuff we talk about, right? On Twitter, that's what you talk about, right? Breaking lines and receiving and opening up and going to goal. Well, a 5 and 6 and 7-year-old kid, they will naturally do that because they realize that is the only purpose, is to score goals, right? They have no other purpose, not to pass the ball and get it back on a combination, right? So what happens though is we actually take that away from them. You know how we do that? As coaches, we scare them when they get the ball, kick it away. They're going to steal the ball and score on you. So all of a sudden you start fumbling that ball. So instead of turning and going forward, you actually try to start to protect the ball. So now we start to teach them how to protect and then escape, right? Rather than receive and go forward to goal. So you talk about reverse engineering. So we kill children at a very young age from the creativity that they have. And then we're like, we need to create these creative children. So at 9, 10, 11, we're trying to give them some creativity, which we actually took away from 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age, right? And then when the kids get to 12, 13 years of age, we start talking about decision-making, because it's okay to dribble at 9, 10, 11, but now you better not give away the ball, because if you do, we lose games. We don't win the state championship.
But we also, or do we also then in our culture over here, because you mentioned about Barcelona. Well, everyone wants to play a possession. All game models, I'm convinced all game models are all the same. The theory-based game models are the same. Everyone wants to possess like Barca. Everyone wants to high press. But those are two systems that are very, very, on surface level, very collective. So everyone, like rondo activities, pass. But in reality, when you go under the surface of what makes those things overload, underloads, whatever you want to, you need dribblers, you need people who are creative, you need problem solvers, which sometimes conflicts with philosophies or training methods of, well, we're all going to do this. So sometimes it's difficult, even at older levels, if that creativity is not nurtured, or I don't know if it's not ingrained, or if it's permission to make mistakes or to be different. And I wonder if that holds us back in North America from that less, to be a number 9, you talk about Defoe and Aguero, they're so selfish, but that's fine. But they're the ones we all miss on a Saturday when we can't take chances, aren't they?
Absolutely. When we watch the game, the funny thing is every coach that watches the game loves the game. They watch it on the weekend and they get excited about the exciting players, right? They don't get excited about one team sitting back and then defending. They talk about it, but that's not exciting, right? So if that's the excitement of the game, why are we not producing those players to excite us, right? And the easiest thing to do is create them at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of age, because you're molding that kid into whatever you want. They're basically a tabula rasa. They come to you blank slate, and what are you going to do with them? So if they have not become anything by 13, 14, you actually failed them as a coach, right? So you take the idea, even the idea of Barcelona, every one of those players is world-class on the ball. That's the only reason they can play positional play. They can keep that ball possession. They understand where to move. They understand angles. Angles, I always refer back to the kids, as math. I say, if you want to play for Barcelona, you better be a great mathematician. If you want to be the next Lionel Messi, think about every pass he makes. Think about the weight of that pass. Think of the angle of the pass. Think of what kind of bend he hits. That's all math, right? And the kid's like, oh, yeah, that's right. So the kids get all excited. So I always refer back to math for the kids so that I can relate school back to soccer as well. But I think it's really important that coaches understand, if you want to have a team that can keep the ball, then like I said, you better move off the ball. You better receive the ball back really well, right? You better be able to drive a ball 25, 30 yards with your laces under the knees.
Yeah, you also have a focus as well, just in doing some research for this and looking at the program. There's a focus on the physical side, which you don't normally, because it seems like your program is really, there's a big technical technical onus, but you also place a focus on the physical side. You've got a high performance program. So at the youth levels, where do you think this process begins? How much physical work do you feel young players should be doing? How is it tiered into team training? What's your philosophy, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when people refer to physical, it was kind of like back, when we were younger, strength training was referred to being muscular, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? I think now when people talk about physical, maybe they're referring to aerobic. They're talking about sprinting. For me, physical is the first component that needs to be put into place from the earliest days of a child's life, basically, right? They start to walk, they start to crawl, right? They start to run. If you don't teach them to jog and run, then how can they play the game? So from the youngest age, so my program at the youngest age, like 4, 5, 6, 7, we call it physical literacy program. And physical literacy being, can you jump? Can you crawl? Can you move backwards, forwards? Can you leap, throw, gallop, skip? All the different movements that come into place, crossover one way, body strength exercises. So those are all very important, because if you cannot move, if you're not a mover, you're not going to be a good 1v1 person, right? If you cannot move, you cannot twist one way to go the other way. If you cannot coordinate hopping on one leg, then how can you do a fake one way and then push the other way? So physical literacy for me is the most important at the beginning ages, along with mentality. So mentality and physical, because a lot of people talk about mentality being, we don't want kids to be competitive. For me, the kid needs to be competitive from day one. And you as a parent at home, if you don't produce a competitive child, no one else is going to produce them for you. Because at home, if I'm not telling my kid that they can do better, and if everything is accepted, then you're not producing mentality, right? So for me, I'm always making everything a competition. And then the competition now becomes physical a lot of the times for kids, right? So when we come into a training session, every single training session always has a warm-up game. And the warm-up game is some sort of tag game. It's not cones put down and you're moving through those properly. Sometimes, it might be because you actually have to teach a certain type of movement. But generally, kids will learn all their movements by escaping, right? So you come to me, I'm going to fake one way, go the other. There's your lunge to the left. There's your lunge to the right. Then you drop your shoulder this way. You get down and up. Even my strength training stuff that we try to throw in, it's gamified, right? You can do wheelbarrow races. Right, you put the kid on the ground and you do a wheelbarrow race. All of a sudden, they're working their upper body. Bear walks, animal walks, different types of animal walks. So now, all of a sudden, you can get your 6, 7, 8, 10-year-olds scream like a bear, right? So they're howling like a bear, but really they're working their shoulders, they're working their legs, right? So the older ages, it's important, obviously, because as you start to now get to the 12, 13, 14, 15, you start to now teach them how to treat their bodies, because all of a sudden they've grown. All of a sudden their hamstrings are tight. So how do you work out to make your hamstrings strong enough so that you don't get an ACL injury, right? So for the female side, especially, we talk about that all the time. I'm always talking to the girls about hamstrings and what are hamstrings important for. We talk about the ACL. So I think it's really important that from a young age, physical is part of it. And then at those 11, 12, 13, you're starting to now educate them on how to do proper techniques of strength training. And then as they get a little bit older, start to introduce a little bit more weight so that they can now become stronger, obviously, and explode to where they need to go.
Canada's probably the same as the US, where the parents show up and they want to get that W on a Saturday, just at 3 o'clock, for some strange reason. Does the fact that you're not emphasizing the result, you're emphasizing the performance, do you ever find that messaging gets difficult or challenging to be hey, we lost, but we're still competitive, or we won and it wasn't competitive enough?
Yeah, absolutely. If you educate parents, then they understand it, right? And that's the basics. So I always talk about, if we develop our players individually, they will eventually win. It's natural, right? You might not win 100% of the time. You might not be the best team, but you generally will become competitive in every game, right? You're not going to get blown out of the water, as you grow, because your technique has improved so much that it's obvious, right? Because other kids aren't working on it. So when we're trying to pass the ball, we can pass the ball. When we want to take a player on, they've made enough mistakes over the years that they understand, if I'm a left back, if I start to dribble into the middle of the field towards my goalkeeper, I've done that too many times. I'm going to fake to go inside. I'm going to go outside. Right. So it's that simple. They've actually figured it out themselves because I've allowed them to do that. Right. Because we allow them to do that. So I think parents get it. You know, they see, you know, their kid comes in, the kid can't receive a ball. They can't pass the ball. All of a sudden, the kid's got some idea on the ball and they're getting comfortable. They see him dribble past the player, you know, and it's just natural. Like parents aren't, you know, they're not blind. They see it. So I think it's a matter of constantly educating. You know, when you lose, you talk about what were the positives that came out of it, right? You show them, look, your child did this. And sometimes what I do is I actually have parents keep track of things. So I want you to keep track of whatever it is. So if it's at a young age, our fullback, if we're playing 7v7, can the fullback play the ball into the winger? Can the fullback play it into their center back? Can they, the goalkeeper, can the fullback play it into center mid, right? And then as we go through the year, can they now find the striker? Because that's a bit longer pass. Right. So we've gone from that 10-yard pass to now 15 to 20-yard pass, right? Which they're going to fail at, obviously. Right. But then you start to, when they see it now, okay, gradual progression in the passing. When the player gets the ball, can you play out? Can you outplay one-on-one? Right. So I think parents see it. They naturally see the evolution of the player.
You posted as well on that there, linking emotion to learning. I found this really interesting because again, I think it's really overlooked that maybe it goes with the engagement piece. We like to say that it's an emotional game and there's the mental and the psyche and all that there, but we don't really work on it at a young level. How are you, or where do you find that you want to layer that in, and how do you manage it and go about that?
I mean, it's very simple. We talk about passion. How is passion created? It's because you love something. And why do you love it? Because you enjoy being there. It's fun, right? And what's fun about it? Competing, learning, being successful, right? So for me, when I'm teaching something, when a kid does something well, I make sure I tell them. I praise them. I show others, hey, look at this kid. Look how he did it. And if the child's not very good at it, I 100% praise them when they get something. You know, even if they get 2/3 of it, I'm like, hey, you're coming along. It's really good. I see the way you twisted there. You're almost there, right? So you just got to keep on encouraging them to get to that level. So all of a sudden, the emotions are positive, right? Versus, man, you suck at that. You know, go home and practice. You know, you got to do that for the next week. I want you to do it 15 minutes every single day. I want you to do 100 turns on your own. Go in your backyard by yourself. Like, what a difference, right? Like, you know, the kid doesn't get it, but if I can go over there and tell them, okay, here, work on this and that, and then they get all excited. They got little one-on-one with me or with the coach, and then they get that next part. Hey, great, you got that. Let's go to level 2, right? So now you're tying in emotion to positive versus negative. You're gamifying it, right? You're moving from level 1 to 2 to 3. So now they feel like I've gone up a level. So I've actually improved, right? If you just give them, okay, here's the move we're going to work on, and this is the end result. And if you don't get it, you suck, right? Then yeah, most of the kids are going to go home thinking, oh, I didn't get it. I wasn't very good. But if we can go through levels, okay, we got to level 3 of level 4. Right? You're almost there. Now I want you to go home and work on it. You're really good. We're so close. Who's going to be the first one to get it? Go home, do it. Send me a video. All of a sudden there's excitement, right? So I think the emotional level is very important because if the emotional state is positive, the learning is happening. If the emotional state is negative, there's still learning happening. But what happens is it has a wear and tear over time. And over time, the kid's just like, you know what? It sucks. I got other things to do. I'm 13, 14. I want to go and play a different thing now. I want to go hang out with my friends. And that's more emotionally, it's more exciting, or they feel better, you know, around people that make them feel better.
Brilliant. Last couple for you here. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are really resonate with your message if they haven't already, and say, right, this is, you know, you're talking about forward thinking, you're talking about gamification, you're talking about changing and being unorthodox in some of the methods and the exercises. But yeah, like that's what we should be doing. But they might be stuck in either a club that's a little bit not robotic, but traditional in their curriculum layout, or they might be just stuck in their own, like, well, I've always done it this way. What's your advice for someone who wants to move more to your end of the continuum? What's the starting point?
It's pretty simple. If you think about why does a kid play? It's because they want to have fun, right? It's all about the player. It's not about the team. It's about the player, right? So the player is the curriculum, right? So what does the player need to do to become better? So if you look at it from the perspective, it's all about this individual child. He's coming to me or she's coming to me for 75 minutes or whatever it is. I need to make that child better by the time they leave. That's simple. So how can I make them better? Physically, technically, give them some insight into the game, right? Some basic principles when we play 3-on-3, stretch that field. When you don't have the ball, can we go defend them like a dog, right? Like, can they get their heart working? All of a sudden you're encouraging them, you're getting them better. So all the things that you want them to do, even you talked about pressing, like we should be talking about pressing at the youngest age, because if we don't talk about when you lose the ball, go get it right away. It's your ball. It's your chocolate. It's your gold. Don't let anyone have that chocolate. Would you share that chocolate? If someone stole it from you, what would you do? You'd run after them, right? That's your chocolate. Go get it, right? And so if you don't have the ball, go get it. If you have the ball, run with it as fast as you can so no one else gets it. Simplest concept. And you laugh, but that was actually the two things I taught my son when he was a young kid. I said, when you don't have the ball, run like Puyol to go win that ball, because Puyol was playing at that time. I said, go like Puyol and like a thunder, go get that ball. When you get the ball, run like Messi, because he runs like the wind and no one could ever get the ball from him. So you just run with the ball, right? So it's all about the individual. So if you can go back to that individual and think of your session as, this kid's coming to me, my job is to make that child better by the time he leaves. If you think like that, then you're going to be making them better. And that's just the way I am. I always have that anxiety when I go to training. I always know that someone is coming to me. They've actually come to me to think this person can make me better. So then that's a lot of pressure on me. I better do my job, because if I'm sitting there on my phone, or if I'm sitting there talking to parents, then I'm not doing my job. I better be involved in that session right now.
Then the last one, which from a personal perspective, I'm really fascinated by, is you can feel the passion, and obviously, like with all the stuff you're doing, it's you seem to be moving at 100 miles an hour. So where do you personally draw your sources of inspiration? Where do you bounce ideas off? Where do you get your ideas? Okay, so
I bounce my ideas off of a lot of people. So the one thing that my father taught me when I was a young kid was the question why is the most important thing. So when I was a little kid and I didn't know something, he literally would make me pick up the phone and call my cousin and ask why or how or what is the answer. All right. And so that got ingrained into me from the very youngest age. So when I would go on coaching courses, I would sit in the front and I would just ask and ask. I don't care what anyone thinks about my questions. I just ask questions. So it'll be the stupidest question, but I know everyone else is asking and thinking that anyways. But I need to know information. And for me, when I get information, I just keep gathering information. Then I'm like, okay, I like it this way. I'm going to manipulate that to be my idea this way. So what I do is, since we started the academy here, I've been bringing in coaches from abroad. So I've got coaches from Manchester United, Espanyol, from Denmark, from Liverpool, you name it, AS Roma. The biggest clubs in the world. I've had coaches that are now coaching at the highest level, national teams. I mean, damn it, Chichi, it doesn't get much bigger, right? Like, I bring in anyone and everyone, and they stay in my home, and we give them Indian food, and I sit there and I talk to them all day long till they fall asleep. My job is to watch them coach, to learn from them, to ask everything that they do, why they did it, how they did it, what do they thought about it, how can we improve it, what do you think we should do at this academy to make it better, how can we be like you? And so that's me. Like my little academy, my whole perspective is, why can I not be the gold mine of this world? That's my way of looking at life. Why is Barcelona the way they are? And why did Iceland get to the World Cup when they only have 250,000 people? We have 1 million people in Ottawa. So why can't I produce players at a better level than Iceland? And why can't we have players playing in Barcelona? So because I think like that, I just don't know any better. That's just what I'm trying to do. So for our club, our ultimate purpose, which is not written anywhere, is to produce 2 Champions League players, UEFA Champions League players. That'll be the success of our club. So, we'll get players to university, we'll get them to this and that, but the Champions League is where it's at. And so I'm always thinking, how do we get them there?
Fantastic, Sanjeev. This interview has just flown by. My only thing is, well, I don't think we've covered half the stuff, so we might have to get you on again in the near future. I've loved it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem, man. It was great being here.